Chosen One, stop scrolling right now, because what I am about to reveal is exactly why certain people have gone strangely silent around you lately, why fake smiles feel forced, why some people watch your life from a distance but never come close anymore. They are not confused about who you are, they are terrified that you figured out what they worked so hard to keep hidden. They studied you like you were weak, like you were easy to break, like you would stay trapped in confusion forever. What they never realized is while they were observing you, you were quietly observing everything, and now the same people who laughed at your pain are whispering your name behind closed doors, because you cracked a code they thought nobody would ever understand. You saw through manipulation disguised as love, betrayal disguised as loyalty, and control disguised as protection, and now they are panicking because you are no longer asleep, you are awake, and once a chosen one wakes up, entire systems begin to shake. Stay with me because what happens next in this message might explain your entire life in ways nobody ever has before. And by the end of this message you may finally understand why your journey had to be so painful in the first place. They were confident that you would never question anything. They assumed your kindness meant weakness. They thought your silence meant ignorance. They believed your heart was too pure to detect deception, and for a season they got away with everything. They lied straight to your face while pretending to guide you. They manipulated your emotions and called it concern. They controlled your choices and called it wisdom, and because you trusted deeply, you kept giving people the benefit of the doubt. But eventually your spirit began noticing tiny details nobody else paid attention to, strange contradictions in conversations, weird energy shifts when certain people entered the room, fake encouragement that somehow left you feeling drained instead of empowered, and little by little your mind started connecting dots that others ignored. You spent nights replaying conversations in your head, trying to understand why certain relationships always left you feeling smaller, and that search for truth became the very thing that changed your life forever. What made them nervous was not your anger, it was your silence. Because while they expected emotional reactions, you became observant. While they thought you were hurt, you were. Gathering evidence, every fake apology was noted, every passive-aggressive comment was remembered, every backhanded compliment exposed another hidden motive, and the more you stayed quiet, the more careless they became. They revealed their true nature because they assumed you were too broken to notice. They underestimated your patience and confused it for weakness. But patience became your weapon, and when the truth fully revealed itself, you did not scream, you simply stepped back and watched their masks fall without touching them, and that calm reaction terrified people who expected chaos from you, and what happened next shocked even you, because your awareness started going deeper than words. You began feeling energy before people even spoke. You could walk into a room and instantly sense jealousy hiding behind smiles. You could feel when someone was secretly competing with you while pretending to support you. You could hear lies hidden inside compliments, and this level of discernment was not learned from books. It was born through survival. Betrayal trained your instincts, heartbreak sharpened your vision, and isolation made your spirit louder than outside opinions. People started calling you distant, cold, and overly sensitive, but what they really meant was they could no longer manipulate you the way they once did, and that loss of control frustrated them deeply. And this is where your real transformation began, because you started questioning family patterns that everyone else accepted without thought. You noticed how guilt was used to control generations, how trauma was renamed tradition, how unhealthy behavior was normalized simply because it had existed for years. You watched people protect toxic systems while attacking those who challenged them, and when you started asking difficult questions, you became the problem in their story. Suddenly you were disrespectful, rebellious, ungrateful, and difficult, but deep inside you knew you were simply refusing inherited dysfunction. You were breaking patterns nobody before you had the courage to confront, and that made you dangerous to people who benefited from your silence. Listen carefully because this next truth might shake you. Some of your biggest betrayals were actually divine redirections. The people who abandoned you were removing themselves from places they were never meant to occupy. The opportunities that collapsed were clearing paths for something bigger, and the heartbreaks that almost destroyed you were exposing attachments that would have ruined your future. What looked like loss was often protection. What felt like rejection was often spiritual repositioning, and when you finally understood this, bitterness began leaving your heart because you realized every painful ending carried hidden purpose, and suddenly your pain started making sense in ways it never had before. And while people thought you disappeared because life defeated you, something very different was happening behind closed doors. You were rebuilding, you were healing in silence, crying where nobody could hear you, praying when no answers seemed to come, reading, learning, reflecting, and tearing down old versions of yourself that were built on survival mode. Nobody applauded you during those nights. Nobody celebrated your discipline. Nobody understood how lonely your transformation felt. But that private season built a version of you that public validation could never create. And now people see your confidence without understanding the pain that created it. Here is what they will never admit out loud. They miss the old version of you because the old version was easier to control. That version apologized too much, tolerated disrespect, ignored intuition, and stayed available to people who constantly drained your peace. But this new version notices everything. This version sets boundaries without guilt. This version walks away from confusion instead of begging for clarity. And that evolution feels threatening to people who built their power around your weakness. They are uncomfortable because your healing ended their influence. And just when they thought they understood you, you changed again. You stopped trying to defend your name. You stopped explaining your intentions. You stopped correcting false narratives. And that silence confused everyone because they expected you to fight for acceptance. But instead, you accepted that some people need you to be the villains so they can avoid confronting their own darkness. And once you made peace with misunderstanding, freedom entered your life in ways you never imagined. Because you can never be controlled by people whose approval you no longer need. Pay close attention, because what happened after this was even more powerful. Your isolation became your training ground. While everyone else chased validation online and attention from strangers, you built discipline in private. You sharpened your mind, strengthened your faith, protected your energy, and created goals nobody knew about. People mocked your absence because they thought silence meant failure. But silence was preparing your comeback, and when you finally reappeared, you were mentally stronger, spiritually sharper, and emotionally untouchable. And now people who ignored you are trying to understand how you transformed so deeply without any public announcement. They also tried labeling everything special about you as a flaw. They called your empathy weakness, your deep thinking overreacting, your quiet nature awkwardness, and your spiritual awareness delusion. But eventually you recognized something powerful. Their labels were confessions of what intimidated them. Your sensitivity exposed lies. Your intensity challenged shallow relationships. Your silence protected your peace. And your uniqueness reminded people that they were living inside boxes. They were too afraid to leave. Once you understood this, you stopped shrinking to make others comfortable and began standing fully in your truth. And then came your biggest awakening. You stopped worshiping external authority. You realized many people in power only wanted obedience, not truth. Some leaders demanded loyalty while secretly living in hypocrisy. Some authority figures used fear to maintain control, and some institutions punished curiosity because curious minds cannot be controlled. But life forced you into situations where nobody came to save you, and in that loneliness you discovered your own inner authority. You stopped waiting for permission to rise and started trusting the divine voice inside you, and that self-trust changed everything forever. Every betrayal after that became information. Every rejection became direction. Every heartbreak became wisdom. Instead of asking why this happened to me, you started asking, what is this preparing me for? and that question transformed your entire reality. Suddenly, pain was no longer punishment. It became training, betrayal became exposure, and disappointment became redirection. Your enemies unknowingly pushed you toward purpose, faster than your supporters ever could, and that realization removed revenge from your heart, because success became your loudest response. And now the same people who once doubted you are watching quietly, because your peace exposes their chaos, your discipline exposes their laziness, your authenticity exposes their masks, and your growth reminds them of every opportunity they wasted. They thought your story would end in brokenness, but your life became proof that chosen ones rise differently. And if you think this message is intense right now, stay with me, because in part 2, I am going to reveal how your healing became their greatest fear, how your presence started exposing hidden enemies. And this is where everything becomes even more shocking, because what happened after your awakening was something nobody around you was prepared for. They expected your healing journey to be temporary. They assumed eventually you would get lonely enough to return to toxic spaces, desperate enough to reopen doors God permanently closed, weak enough to miss people who only loved the version of you they could control. But instead, you became stronger in silence, wiser in solitude, and sharper. Through every battle they thought would destroy you, and that terrified people because your pain was supposed to break your spirit, not build your kingdom. Your wounds were supposed to keep you distracted, not push you into purpose. Yet somehow every storm turned into strategy, and every setback turned into strength, and now the same people who once predicted your downfall are silently watching your rise with confusion written all over their faces. What truly shook them was realizing you no longer react the way you used to. Once upon a time they could manipulate your emotions with silence, guilt, fake concern, and carefully crafted lies. They knew exactly what buttons to press because they helped install them. They knew how to trigger your insecurities, how to make you question yourself, and how to keep you emotionally exhausted enough to stay dependent on their approval. But that version of you no longer exists. Now when someone tries to provoke you, you respond with distance. When someone tries guilt, you choose peace. When someone lies, you quietly observe. And when someone tries to drag you back into old cycles, you walk away without explaining yourself. And that emotional discipline has become your greatest weapon, because people cannot control someone who has mastered their own reactions. They never imagined your silence would become louder than their accusations, because many of them created false stories about you, hoping others would turn against you. They painted you as unstable because you set boundaries, selfish because you stopped overgiving, arrogant because you discovered your worth, and distant because you refused fake relationships. But over time, their lies began collapsing under the weight of your consistency. People noticed that your actions never matched the rumors. They saw your calmness, your discipline, your kindness, and your growth. And slowly the same individuals who believed those false narratives began questioning who was really telling the truth. That is what happens when someone lives with integrity. Eventually lies become too heavy to carry, and truth exposes everything without needing an argument. And let us talk about your isolation season, because people misunderstood it completely. They thought you were lonely, depressed, forgotten, and defeated. They laughed at your absence because they only respect loud success. But what they never saw were the nights you spent rebuilding your mind, the mornings you forced yourself to keep going when quitting felt easier, the prayers whispered through tears, the books you read, the habits you changed, the addictions you defeated, the boundaries you learned, and the discipline you built while nobody was clapping for you. They saw your disappearance as weakness, when it was actually preparation, because real transformation often happens in hidden seasons, where nobody notices your growth until your life becomes impossible to ignore. And then came the moment your standards changed forever. You stopped chasing friendships that felt one-sided. You stopped entertaining conversations that drained your spirit. You stopped lowering your expectations just to avoid being alone, and you stopped forcing yourself into spaces where your soul felt unsafe. This confused many people because they were used to your unlimited access. They expected endless forgiveness without accountability, endless loyalty without reciprocity, and endless patience while they repeated harmful behavior. But now your peace became expensive, and not everyone could afford access to it, and that boundary protected your future more than you realize. Listen carefully, because this truth is powerful. Some people are not angry because you harmed them. They are angry because you healed without their permission. They built their identity around your pain. Some felt powerful when you needed them. Some felt important when you were confused. And some secretly enjoyed being the stronger one in the relationship. But your growth disrupted that entire dynamic. Now they cannot rescue you because you saved yourself. They cannot confuse you because you trust your instincts. And they cannot manipulate you because you see patterns too clearly. Your healing became a mirror, and many people hated what they saw in their own reflection. And here is what many chosen ones struggle to understand. Your biggest gift was never perfection. It was resilience. You survived things that should have destroyed your confidence, your faith, and your future. Betrayal did not make you bitter. Heartbreak did not make you cold. Rejection did not make you quit. And failure did not convince you to stop dreaming. Every painful season added another layer of wisdom to your soul. And now when people meet you, they feel depth they cannot explain. They sense discipline built through suffering, confidence built through loss, and peace built through chaos. And that type of strength cannot be copied because it was earned in private battles nobody witnessed. There were also moments when you questioned whether all this pain was worth it. Moments when loneliness felt unbearable. Moments when watching others succeed faster made you wonder if your sacrifices mattered. Moments when you cried because you were tired of always being strong. But those moments were not proof of weakness. They were proof that you were human. And despite those breakdowns, you kept moving. You kept believing. You kept showing up for your future even when your present felt heavy, and that consistency is why your breakthrough is closer than many realize. And now something even more interesting is happening. The same people who underestimated you are quietly studying you. They watch your discipline, your peace, your growth, and your success from a distance. They want to know your secret. They want to understand how someone they once dismissed became so powerful. But they are searching for shortcuts while ignoring the truth. Your strength was built through sacrifice, isolation, painful honesty, and spiritual discipline. There was no overnight success. There was no magic formula. There was only your decision to keep growing when life gave you every reason to stop. And this next season of your life will shock people even more, because what you survived prepared you for leadership. Your voice will reach people you have never met. Your testimony will heal people silently fighting battles similar to yours. Your wisdom will guide those still trapped in confusion, and your story will become proof that survival can transform into purpose. Everything you endured is about to make sense in ways you never imagined. Those painful chapters were not random. They were training for the assignment attached to your life. And understand this clearly, you do not need revenge. Revenge keeps you spiritually connected to people you have already outgrown. Your greatest victory is peace. Your greatest response is success. Your greatest statement is living so fully aligned that people who betrayed you become chapters in a story you no longer revisit. Let them wonder how you healed so deeply. Let them question how you stayed kind after everything you endured. Let them watch as your life continues rising beyond their expectations. Because the final truth is this: you were never buried, you were planted. Every betrayal was soil. Every rejection was rain. Every painful lesson was sunlight preparing you to grow into something unstoppable. They thought they were ending your story when they were actually helping write your transformation. And now you stand stronger, wiser, calmer, and more powerful than ever before, not because life was easy, but because you refused to let pain define your destiny. So to every chosen one listening right now, if this message feels like your story, understand that your greatest chapter has not even begun yet. The silence you survived was preparation. The heartbreak you survived was redirection, and the battles you survived were proof that you were built for something bigger. Keep moving forward. Keep protecting your peace. Keep trusting what God placed inside you, because the same people who doubted your future may soon witness a level of success, peace, and purpose they never believed was possible for you. And when that day comes, you will not need to say a single word. Your life will say everything for you. Welcome to your rise, chosen one. This is only the beginning. God bless you.